Hey everybody, Dom Nicastro here, CMSWire Managing Editor with new contributor Vinay Bhagat. He's the CEO of TrustRadius. Vinay, thanks for joining me today.
Delighted to be on, Dom.
And never mind, that's enough about you. Who do you got there on the lap? Lift him up a little bit so we can see the young fella.
This is Tuttle.
Yes.
He's my best
Oh,
friend, and
it looks that way.
he's been a bit of a mascot for Trust Radius as well.
No kidding. Oh, see, now it's my new favorite company. So I mean, Tuttle. How do you spell Tuttle's name?
Tuttle,
Okay, cool.
but we
Very
call him
creative.
King. We call him King Tut for short.
King Tut. Okay, so King he rules the
He
land
rules the
over
roost.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
What part of the world are you in? What city?
I'm in Austin, Texas, where
Okay.
it's sweltering hot right now.
The new tech capital of the world. Throwing that out there for argument. What do you
Yeah,
think?
it's certainly booming. And I wouldn't say it's Silicon Valley
Mhm.
yet, but it's become certainly a hub for entrepreneurship, and a lot of companies have relocated their HQs here as well, driving up house prices.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and I wrote a story like raising that question for CMS, where is Austin the next or the new Silicon Valley? And it got a lot of attention. And I think, of course, the Austin folks will say, sure it is. But you just said it wasn't quite there yet. So I like your objective view. But yeah, I mean, the people talk about the cost of living and just a bustling tech community constantly growing. I know COVID stalled a lot, or maybe it didn't stall a lot of that because, I mean, real estate growth, I'm sure, but the era of remote work and working from home. I mean, hey, you can be a Silicon Valley company and work in Austin these
Yeah,
days.
yeah. We see a lot of Silicon Valley company execs choose to relocate here. It's a nice quality of life, and it's still you still feel connected into a community. So it's a good place to live.
Yeah, good. Well, before we get into the topic of your article, which is cookies, did Tuttle get upset there because he wants a cookie now, or is Cookie not in the Bagat family? What is it?
Oh,
Tree
my
Cookie?
my kids are one of the cookie monsters around here. Tuttle would like them, but he's not allowed to have cookies.
Okay, good. All right, strict diet for Tuttle. So tell us more about the company. I've followed you guys for a few years now, and it's a pretty cool business model. But tell our listeners a little bit more about your company and how you founded it and what you do for it.
Yeah, we think of ourselves as an online research platform for technology buyers. The center of what we publish are in-depth, structured product reviews from verified users. Um, but we also have now content around pricing, around feature specifications. We have video content. We also have product demo content on our site as well. And the mission is to kind of be that one-stop shop for the buyer to do their research. We've witnessed a trend, a very heavy trend towards buyers wanting to self-educate or self-serve. And defer the point at which they speak to sales or not speak to sales at all in some instances. And a lot of that research they want to do through independent sources. They will go to the brand, they will speak to the vendor at some point in their journey as well, for sure. But they really value hearing from their peers. And so we've become an important venue and platform for buyers to conduct that research. About 1 million people use us every month, and it's not just SMBs; it's a lot of mid-market and enterprise companies as well.
Good to know. Thank you for that update on the company. Um, yeah, I like talking to peers too, especially those industry conferences too. Man, I miss those, and I've gotten out to one post COVID. Fortunate enough to do that, Forrester, Nashville, Tennessee, and you just don't hear. I mean, you can have the most glorified keynote of all time, but the bottom line is you're going to get the real story in those hallways, at the
Mm-hmm.
lunch tables, the dinner, the cocktail hour with the users talking
Mm-hmm.
about how they use the software. And I love it as a reporter, as an editor, to get out there and just listen to peers that are talking about how they use software. So smart business model. Hey, let's talk about the article. This is your debut for CMS Wire. Congratulations. Thank you for being with us. It's huge to have, people in the trenches listening, who listen to marketers, who listen to customer experience folks every day. Those are the folks we care about. And your article, your debut article, talks about Google and cookies and sort of how to react to that. Let's start with the delay first. Another delay about the demise of third-party cookies tracking on Chrome. To the second half of 2024, I believe, is the delay now that Google came out with last month. What's the initial reaction there? I mean, is there anything different that marketers should do?
Not a huge surprise. I mean, obviously, Google's a very ad-reliant business, so there are profound impacts for them. And I think when you think about sort of the hypotheses or ideas being put forward by Google as replacements, they're still in the testing ideation phase and not fully fleshed out and developed. And so I think both from a allowing the market to be more ready perspective and also for Google to be more ready, the delay was kind of inevitable, to be honest. It's a complex shift. It's a complex policy shift for them. It's easier for other browsers like Firefox, to make the change immediately because they don't have that dependency on the ad revenue like Google does. So not wholly surprised. I think many of us saw this coming.
Yeah. Yeah. So they get that little reprieve, a little bit of delay marketers get. And also in your article, you talk about, the age of the self-service buyer being here. I'd love for you to expand upon that.
Yeah. So we think there are a few important structural changes that have occurred in our industry that are causing buyers to do a lot more self-service. One is just demographic shifts. 65% of buyers today are millennials and Gen Z, and millennials have aged into positions of authority. They're now the largest managerial segment of the workforce, and so those constituents, I'm a Gen Xer, but millennials and Gen Z have grown up with all of these new media at their fingertips, whether that's review sites or communities or search engines, always connected with their phone. And it's just natural to think that they're going to take the buying habits they've developed in their personal lives to the workplace. Just think about how people buy cars today. You don't start your journey touring dealerships. You start your journey doing online exploration and reading, journals, maybe like yours, but also watching videos, reading reviews, tapping into one's personal network and social network to get advice. And all of those behaviors around how we buy in our personal lives are translating to how people buy in the workplace. And so when we coin the term sort of age of the self-serve buyer, we believe we've really arrived at a point where buyers are really trying to take control of their journey. They will be receptive to on-point sales and marketing messages, but really they want to run their research process pretty independently. They rely on third-party sources very heavily. They want to control the point at which they talk to sales, and they'd like to find as much information upfront as possible. Pricing is a big one. A lot of buyers feel that most brands are pretty non-transparent when it comes to pricing. They don't expect to have complete specific pricing outline, but they want to know ballpark how much a solution is going to cost, whether they can afford it or not. They want to touch and feel the product. And so whether that's a trial, whether that's a limited license, or whether that's a product tour or a demo, they want to be able to do that without speaking to a salesperson. And we also, aside from the desire from buyers to kind of self-serve and self-educate, progressive vendors have catalyzed this change through product-led growth options, where you can start with a free version of the tool, or you can start with one seat, etc. And so products like Calendly or Miro or Slack have really led the expectation with buyers that they ought to be able to try before they buy, or try a limited implementation before a big enterprise rollout. And so I think these two kind of market forces have been critical changes in terms of the buyer's journey and the buyer's approach.
Yeah, you mentioned you're a Gen Xer and you have Gen Zs and millennial research out there. And then how come no one cares about us, the Gen Xers? I'm a Gen Xer too. There's not even any research about, no one cares about our buying habits. Like we just skip over us. Doesn't it seem like that?
Well, I mean, our report did cover all generations. We covered Gen
Okay.
X's and boomers too. I think the start point is just the proportion of the population now that are millennial. And that, strategies that were architected 15 years ago based upon boomers and Gen Xers now have to shift to now the largest buying population. I think it's true also to say that Gen Xers and boomers are mirroring those millennial buying habits, right? I mean, I do all my research online. I want to vet things independently before speaking to a salesperson. I'll still go to the car dealership and test drive, but I'll do a ton of research online first. So I think we do see some generational differences in our data in terms of how people behave, but we see the same patterns kind of flowing across generations.
Yeah. And then you talked about also in your debut piece on CMS Wire, ushering in like this new generation of intent data driven marketing. Now, when I see that, I say, all right, well, hasn't marketing been data driven for a while? So you see there's a new level of this, like a new generation of intent data driven marketing. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think to tie it to the story about sort of the cookieless future, I think it's first important to kind of level set on what we've been doing with cookies now for some time. So obviously there are two important distinctions in cookies between first party and third party cookies. First party cookies were really intended to create a better buying experience, and it's the data stored on the website by the company hosting the website in order to personalize the interactions with the consumer. Um, but with third-party cookies, it was really designed to share data across networks and give advertisers the ability to improve their efficiency on ad spend. Perhaps in some instances there was a value to the buyer in that they were getting more relevant ads, but it was really around serving the marketers' needs to have the ability to target people who had propensity to buy, and therefore to be more efficient with their advertising spend. Buyer intent data, there are different forms of buyer intent data. So just like in the world of cookies, there's what we call first party intent data, where you as a property have people visiting your own site, interacting with your own emails. And if you are a PLG company using maybe a trial or a limited version of your product, or even a whole version of your product that's just a limited seat license, all of those signals are signals that you have firsthand control of. So we think of that as first party intent. It's incredibly important. It's an incredibly important signal of interest in your particular company. Third party intent typically are the aggregators, people like Bombora, or the data inside ABM systems like 6sense and Demandbase, where they take an aggregate view of what's happening across the web, across thousands of media sites based upon things like keyword searches, and give you a high level sense of who's interested in a topic area. Tends to be high volumes of data, tends to be a weak signal of propensity to buy, but it could be helpful for top of funnel marketing to people who are interested broadly in a topic. We and a few other forums have pioneered this notion of second party intent, where we have an owned property. In our case, it's trustradius.com. We have 1 million people using our site, and people don't come to our site to casually browse. They're there because they're actually shopping, they're researching products, they're coming in on keywords like product X reviews, or product X versus product Y, or best ABC software. And those are all high indicators of real purchase intent. And then we find that people are on average spending 10 to 11 minutes on some of our key pages, which indicates they're serious.
That's a
And
lifetime.
so
That's a lifetime.
that
Today.
is, the
Yeah.
average person spends 45 seconds on a web page.
Yeah.
So to
Believe it.
spend 10 to 11 minutes is a lifetime, to your point. And so what that means is we use reverse IP to identify that population, as much of that population as we can. And those signals constitute a very clear signal of intent. It's going to be lower volume than what you might get out of an aggregator like Bambora, demand base of 6 cents, but it's going to be a much more high fidelity signal. And so what companies have found is that using that data to pinpoint their advertising drives dramatically higher response rates because you're really targeting people who are in market. The second thing is because we track what is the portfolio of products that person is researching, it allows advertisers to maybe do targeted advertising, against a competitor, or to enable their sales team to use that intelligence to position more effectively. So, for example, the digital sales team at IBM can tell whether they're competing against Amazon or Google or Oracle in a cloud deal, and then use that intelligence to arm their sales team effectively to say the right thing. And so intent data allows brands to, again, target, whether that's outreach through prospecting. It allows them to concentrate their ad spend on the buyers who are in market. It allows them to personalize based upon the basket of competitors they're considering. And also, one of the things that we're trying to do is track everyone's interactions around, are they watching a demo? Are they looking at pricing data? And could that then infer where they are on their journey? Are they kind of mid-funnel or down-funnel in terms of where they are? And again, it allows a marketer to personalize, be more relevant to the prospective buyer. It's a value to the buyer because they get more relevant content and advertising, but it's also a huge value add to the vendor to be able to get more efficiency on their ad spend and drive people faster through the funnel.
Yeah. Let's wrap things up, Vinay, with a 30-second piece of advice to a marketer right now who's looking at this delay from Google with the cookies, phasing out the second half of 2024-ish. What's their first move if they're wondering what that is?
They've got to start to chart the strategy. So if they're dependent on third-party cookies today, they've got to chart an independent strategy, and it means really three things. One, developing their own first-party audience, and people use the term zero-party data, where they are motivating people to contribute intelligence about themselves on a voluntary basis, but certainly having their own audience through their own content marketing strategy, their own SEO strategy is super important. Second, be where the buyers are. Buyers are using key watering holes to do their research. Review platforms are certainly part of that, makes a very important part, but also communities like Reddit, Twitter are important too. You have to be there if your buyers are there. And then thirdly, it is time to think about your strategy around intent data. If you're not using it, you're at a disadvantage because your competition probably is.
Awesome. Well, I only have one problem with this interview, Vinay, is I don't know where Tuttle is anymore. I mean, where did Tuttle go? I mean, just camera shy, or was it too much on you for the wait? Okay, there's we can.
Yeah, I think Tuttle wants to add something. He goes, well, I think that's a good summary, Dad. But you really missed out the part about the chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know about this Google cookies stuff, but I could use a cookie in the form of like a dog bone or something. Yeah, no. He doesn't care about the Google cookies. We do, though. Vinay, thanks for contributing to CMSWire.com. Looking forward to more. Anytime you get inspiration, the door is open here. And thanks again for this interview as well.
It was my pleasure, Dom. Thank you. It was fun.
All right, have a good one.